Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Rock Concert, an oral history as told by the artists, backstage insiders, and fans who were there. By Marc Myers. Narrated by Michael Butler Murray and Christina Delaine. Introduction. Live music has a long past. The Hurrian Songs, one of the world's oldest examples of written music, composed 3,400 years ago, were meant to be performed in front of an audience. Scratched onto clay tablets, the ancient songbook was unearthed by archaeologists in the 1950s at the entrance to a royal palace in Syria. The tablets even included tuning instructions for a Babylonian lyre, an early stringed relative of the guitar. Though many of the songs survived only in fragments, the one complete tablet was a hymn to Nikal, the Hurrian goddess of orchards and wife of the moon god. Love songs and concerts weren't far behind. From the beginning, live music's purpose was to transform a gathering into a community by unifying an audience's mood. Live music could accomplish what oratory often failed to achieve: collective agreement and a sense of belonging. Through the centuries, live performances that had once been held only at palaces, churches, and the homes of the wealthy expanded to public spaces. The arrival of printed sheet music in America in the mid-1800s and wax phonograph cylinders in 1889 gave rise to popular music and at-home entertainment. But they didn't replace live music. In fact, the proliferation of parlor pianos and recorded music boosted the public's interest in performance. At the start of the 20th century, live music not only was a diversion, but also helped assimilate millions of newly arrived immigrants by making them feel American. The first rock concerts went one step further. For the first time, a genre of popular music was recorded and performed, specifically for adolescent listeners. In addition to uniting this market, the music empowered the youth culture to air its grievances and stand up for its rights. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, traditional popular music certainly attracted teens, but they were listening to their parents' music. What changed in the mid-1950s was access and allowance money. Starting in the early 1950s, sales of portable phonographs for teens and preteens began to climb. Parents were happy to shell out for lightweight record players, since the turntables and 45s kept children at home in their rooms and allowed parents to watch their new TV sets undisturbed. Smaller night-table radios also wound up in children's rooms, giving them an opportunity to find new music anywhere on the dial. But as parents soon discovered, the music teens found was provocative and liberating. From the start, rock and roll artists, records, and concerts sided with teens in their battle for independence from parents. Over time, the music would support a wide range of teen grievances. Between 1950 and 1985, rock echoed the American youth culture's concern with segregation, lousy teachers, the threat of nuclear war, middle-class conformity, the draft, the Vietnam War, civil rights, women's rights, pollution, gay rights, world hunger, imperiled family farms, and more. Through rock, the youth culture had a voice. Rock's roots date back to 1944 and the emergence of hundreds of independent record labels. A good number of these labels recorded black artists, pioneering a new form of saxophone-driven dance music, known broadly as jump blues. This extension of boogie-woogie led directly to R&B in 1949, which relied on smaller ensembles, vocals, and a distinct backbeat. By then, the use of tape in studios reduced the cost of recording and enabled a greater number of small labels to record R&B artists. Unlike pop and jazz, R&B exhibited a new level of earthiness and blunt sexuality, and R&B concerts added visual excitement. In the mid-1950s, the music shifted, and a new, gentler form of R&B was marketed to teens. Instead of dwelling on sex, drinking, cheating, and other adult themes that dominated R&B records, rock and roll concerned itself with teen anxieties and social issues, such as cars, school life, dances, dating, breaking up, and falling in love. Uplifted by animated disc jockeys who played rock and roll records and championed the youth culture on the radio, teens embraced the music in concerts as a way to bond socially and rebel against the restrictions imposed by authority figures. They also began to question and challenge adult values. Before the arrival of rock and roll, popular music made little effort to win over young listeners. One of the first significant pop concerts was Paul Whiteman's An Experiment in Modern Music at New York's Aeolian Hall in February 1924. The concert was notable for the debut of George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, a classical jazz suite commissioned exclusively for the event. Whiteman's intent was to show that American jazz in the hands of a Broadway songwriter could impress a highbrow audience weaned on European classical music. The paying audience was composed mostly of adults. Louis Armstrong's lyric and bold trumpet playing during performances with the Fletcher Henderson Orchestra in the 1920s and in his own Hot 5 and Hot 7 ensembles helped jazz's raucousness and dance steps connect with young adult audiences. Armstrong also helped establish the electrifying improvised solo. Bix Beiderbecke's horn did the same with college-age audiences in the 1920s. Throughout the decade, jazz was so potent that the syncopated music left its mark not only on young adults, but also on everything from fashion and design to architecture and the English language. There's a reason the 1920s was known as the Jazz Age. With the onset of the Depression in the early 1930s, radio became the country's most popular source of live music. You paid once for a radio, and all of its programming was free, thanks to the sponsorship of advertisers. Once the sound quality of radio vastly improved with the advent of the ribbon microphone in 1931, live on-air music and announcers' voices were clearer and more lifelike. Radio sales climbed, and programming became more diversified. By the mid-1930s, radio house bands and orchestras performed popular and classical music live in the radio studio throughout the day. To protect those jobs, the musicians' union prohibited the airplay of records. The first inkling that live dance music might gain traction with young audiences nationwide came during Benny Goodman's appearance at Los Angeles' Palomar Ballroom in August 1935. Since the early 1930s, black bands led by Jimmy Lunsford, Fletcher Henderson, Chick Webb, and others had already been playing a new, looser form of dance music at ballrooms in black communities. White radio listeners were largely unaware of these bands or their performances in the early 1930s, since race records, as they were known then, were sold mostly in black neighborhoods. In the summer of 1935, Goodman's final cross-country tour performance was to be held at the Palomar Ballroom, with the NBC radio network set to air the show. When the Goodman Band launched into up-tempo arrangements of Sugarfoot Stomp, King Porter Stomp, and other instrumentals, a thunderous cheer went up from the mostly white teens attending, who had followed the band on the radio during its travels. Goodman's 3-week Palomar engagement launched what became known as the swing era, when black big band dance music crossed over to young white audiences listening to national radio networks. The impact of the swing era's groove on the youth culture can be seen in a YouTube documentary clip of the Carnival of Swing concert, held at New York's Randall's Island Stadium in May 1938. The benefit concert, known now as one of the first outdoor jazz festivals, ran about 6 hours and attracted an estimated 23,000 young white and black fans, who danced freely in place and in the aisles.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?